It's September 1984, and I'm your regular pre-teen at secondary school, if a little bit shy, spotty, and with a bad stutter. I've got 2 very loving parents and 3 annoying younger brothers. They were annoying then, they're not annoying now. Weekends were pretty good. Saturdays were spent either watching Manchester United or having a cheeky McDonald's with my grandma. I mean, they were pretty good, and so my parents decided to keep Shabbat and be kosher, which meant I couldn't do those things anymore, and so I quietly vowed to myself that I'd have nothing to do with Judaism ever again. There's a grainy home video showing an 11-year-old me refusing to stand with my brothers whilst we lit Hanukkah candles, physically distancing myself from Jewish life. But let's fast forward to Thursday night, October 15th, 1987. It's Simchat Torah in the Holy Law Synagogue in Prestwich, North Manchester. I'm sat there bored, and I mean really bored, but find myself next to this guy called Jeremy, who after a while asks, "Fancy going over to Bnei Akiva? It's better than this, and there's loads of alcohol." Remember, this is Manchester in the mid-80s, a time when unsupervised teenage drinking was thought to be the best way to promote both Judaism and Zionism. But Bnei Akiva was a place I'd promised myself never to go to. It was somewhere frum and very Jewish. That's how bored I was. But soon after walking in, Rachel Gordon, a 17-year-old youth leader, says to me, "Hi, is this your first time here? You should come with Jeremy next Shabbat. We have activities for your age." So guess what a 14-year-old heterosexual boy said to a pretty 18-year-old girl who actually spoke to him? So I thought, let's go. What's the worst that could happen? Well, it made me think. 4 years of kippah and tzitzit wearing fun and summer camps later, I finished my gap year with Bnei Akiva. 4 months of kibbutz and 8 months in yeshiva, and filled with Talmud and Jewish law, I start Birmingham University as the only kippah-wearing bloke in my year. I get really into the clubbing scene and start hanging out with new friends from exotic places like Milton Keynes and Chalfont St Giles. But I loved Jewish student life too, and get involved organising events and parties and other important things, like trying to stop progressive rabbis speaking on campus and teaching Shabbat songs at JSOC Friday night dinners that no one wanted to hear. But then, so-called religious Zionist Baruch Goldstein murdered 29 Muslims praying in Hebron, and the following year, so-called religious Zionist Yigal Amir murdered Yitzhak Rabin, and that made me think again too. So after another year in yeshiva, I start working in Jewish education, and boom, I find myself working with youth leaders who are not only religious and Zionist like me, but also Zionist without being religious, and passionately Jewish without being Orthodox. And that really made me think, and ponder, and question. I moved to London. I'm still observant, but I come across the Reform Chavara, a blend of Hasidic Shlomo Carlebach tunes and an egalitarian approach to Judaism and prayer. I know, it's a crazy life. But joyful, spiritual music with men and women sitting together. A few years pass, and I think again, I should probably tell my parents that I've stopped wearing my kippah. But what will they say? And how upset will my shaitel-wearing Chevra Kadisha doing from primary school teaching mum and super involved in the shul Torah shiur loving dad actually be when I tell them? After a few years of putting on my kippah on when I visited home, I forgot one time. And so my mum said, "I think your kippah's fallen off." And so I explained. Jessica and I get engaged, which of course meant 2 Ufrafs. My Orthodox Ufraf in Manchester and our Reform Ufraf at Eilith. That was the one my mum said she couldn't come to. Maybe I could have explained our tension in how we wanted to respectfully mark Shabbat as a married couple, You see, my in-laws lived in Stanmore, whilst we lived in Hendon. So how would we manage Friday nights? So we came to a convoluted Talmud-esque decision where I agreed to go in the car on Shabbat, but I wouldn't drive. Can you guess what this led to? Not mixed dancing, but me taking off my glasses at the traffic lights near our flat and pretending to rub my eyes on the drive home. A perfect disguise, just in case my old friends had set up a vigilante group looking out for people feeling a little guilty about breaking Shabbat in a Renault Clio on the A1. But those echoes of orthodoxy remain, which is why when my kids were little and they woke up crying, how did I settle them? By cuddling them in the rocking chair, singing Eli Eli and Mekolot Mayim. Why? Because those were the beautiful and calming songs from Sudash Lishit on Shabbat that I learned at Bnei Akiva. And I wanted to pass on that deep sense of comfort that I felt, of a place that I'd left behind, but was also thankful for having been part of. And it's still a constant challenge. It's why at home we don't watch TV on Shabbat. It's why we don't spend money on Shabbat, apart from the times we do. Because the fluid nature of our Jewish identity means that we can. And because, to be honest, life's too short to stop grandchildren watching football with their grandparents, even if it's Shabbat. Though it doesn't stop us wondering if it's the right thing. But when we visit my parents, brothers and nephews and nieces in Israel, my kids get to see that people do different Jewish things in different ways. I believe it's good for them, and I also enjoy it. For some families, though, this can be really difficult. But it doesn't have to be, and I'm very lucky that mine love, accept, and respect, and that goes both ways. We got married in 2004, and before my parents made Aliyah, in the summer of 2008, we had been on a Pesach Seder rota, 1 year in Stanmore, 1 year in Manchester. And this was supposed to be a Stanmore year, but I wanted one last opportunity to have my mum's fried fish. And so we called my parents to suggest that we come for a few days beforehand, stay for first night Seder, and then return to London in the morning. A perfect compromise. But alas, no. My mum didn't want that. I understood. I knew how awkward the whole suggestion was for them. Plus, they'd have to answer the questions from friends in shul, asking, "Where are the kids?" And they'd have to explain. But then half an hour later, she called back to say, "What am I thinking? Of course, come." You see, my parents chose seeing their children and their 1-month-old granddaughter over that awkwardness. That's love. But do I miss being part of the Orthodox world? No. But sometimes yes. Do I think that progressive Judaism is the answer? Not always. Though I love guitar-led Shabbat services. Is an egalitarian approach to Jewish life important to me? 100%. Do I think that religion sometimes gets a free pass with misogyny and homophobia masquerading as tradition and halakha? Yes, I do. But sometimes I miss the certainty of religious consistency, of singing Shabbat songs. Occasionally, I think about my tefillin gathering dust. I wonder if we're confusing the kids. But does it matter? Maybe. Who knows? But talking about it helps, and having an open and understanding heart is important. A couple of years ago, my brother was in the midst of studying to be a rabbi. An Orthodox one, don't worry. He and his family were coming to London to visit. And each time we discussed the trip, he said that he needed to talk to me about something. And each time we spoke, he mentioned it, but never said what it was. It was always to be discussed next time. And so we were talking one day, and I said, "Are you going to tell me you won't eat in our house?" "Yes," was his reply. "Okay," I said, "is that it?" "What? You don't mind? Is that okay?" he said. I respond, "Of course it's fine. I wouldn't have eaten in my house 20 years ago either." They arrive, and his kids ate our fish fingers anyway, and then he really needed a cup of coffee. You see, I believe Judaism has been about the push and pull of life ever since the Torah says that God created the second human being, as an ezer kenegdo. Ezer, a strong partner to help us, and also kenegdo, to be in opposition to us and to challenge us. That is our DNA. So what's the purpose of this story? Maybe it's recognizing that you don't have to fit into a religious box. And even so, boxes come in all shapes and sizes. Maybe it's to acknowledge that some of us are on a journey, that Jewish life can be confusing, but that sometimes confused is a good place to be. Jewish life has evolved over many centuries, and we are the fortunate inheritors of wonderful and life-enhancing, but sometimes challenging and contradictory traditions and practices. Like my t-shirt says, I'm Ashkefardic ultra-reconservadox and proud of it. I really am.